Ireland and the All Blacks this weekend, folks, from the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. This is a pretty tasty-looking game, ranked 1 in the world against ranked 3 in the world. The All Blacks and Ireland have such a great recent history. Like it used to be when I grew up that Ireland, we would always beat Ireland. Even if it was a kind of tasty game, even if it had great moments, in the end of the game, the All Blacks would always walk away winners. It is so much, albeit a bit painful because we've had a few tough losses, but the rivalry is so good in recent years, and this is another chapter in that rivalry. Ireland, a very tough team to beat at home. The All Blacks do go into this one at underdogs, but we'll go through the squads, we'll go through the recent history, some stats, predictions. You guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, because there's plenty of more rugby content to come. The Ireland squad is pretty consistent with the side which played over in South Africa a few months ago. Remembering this is their first game back after that South African series, because they've been off playing some URC rugby. They had a holiday in the meantime, but Andy Farrell's not a guy to kind of chop and change the squad willy-nilly, so I can't imagine there will be that much rust, even if they haven't played together recently, with this being their first game. Porter, Kelleher and Beauden, that's the front row. Beauden starts in place of Tadhg Furlong, who misses the squad with injury. He came into it with a hamstring injury, hasn't done enough to recover in time. It seemed like Andy Farrell kind of hinted that he potentially could have played, but it wasn't worth risking him worsening the injury ahead of kind of future games on the horizon. So Beauden gets the start at tight head. Kelleher is the starting hooker in the place of Dan Sheehan, who's still out with an ACL. Kelleher started in that last game against South Africa as well. So that's a reassuring one, because there seemed to be a bit of an injury crisis with Irish hookers recently, but Kelleher and Herring being there is a little bit reassuring. Porter, I guess the only thing with him is the penalties conceded. It's a real area of, I don't want to say weakness, but it's an area of his game that gets pinged a lot. Yeah, if that happens against the ABs, it will be a big decision for Andy Farrell as to how long he stays on. But if he keeps the penalty count relatively clean, he's an absolutely world-class player to have at loose head. McCarthy and James Ryan are your locks. That's steady as she goes. James Ryan was putting in some massive dominant hits against the Springboks, which is a good side to do it against. If you can do it against them, you do it against anybody. And in the back row, Tadhg Beirne, Josh van der Flier and Caelan Doris. Caelan Doris's leg drive post-contact meters are nuts. Like, even against South Africa, he was averaging 4 meters a carry down in South Africa in that last game. So, yeah, hard man to stop, and you can bet Josh van der Flier will in all likelihood be the Irish top tackler if he plays the full 80. Backs 9 and 10, Jamison Gibson Park and Jack Crowley. So Jamison Gibson Park missed that tour to South Africa, but he is back, and he is a key man in that kind of quick recycle ball game that Ireland like to play. Jack Crowley continues to get the nod ahead of Kieran Frawley, who is on the bench. He was the drop goal hero against South Africa. You can bet he's going to be putting the pressure on Crowley for that starting 10 spot going forward, but Crowley is the incumbent. He still gets the nod. It's a healthy one to have in that battle between these two guys. We've had it for a long time in New Zealand. We had like the Moonga against Barrett debate at 10. You feel like the Crowley against Frawley debate will go on for Ireland for quite some time. Aki and Ringrose in the midfield. Aki will be licking his lips at playing against some old familiar faces with the All Blacks. And then back 3, Mac Hansen is back after a long absence for Ireland. It'll be interesting to see what kind of test form he comes in with. James Lowe is on the left wing. There are some other kind of good form wingers in Ireland, but these two guys have been the preferred candidates when fit. And James Lowe has that big boot on him, so that's kind of a separating factor for him ahead of the likes of a Stockdale. And Hugo Keenan is another one who missed out on South Africa with the Olympics being on. He was with the Sevens. He returns to the fullback spot. He is a assured pair of hands, so if the All Blacks kick him the ball, 9 times out of 10, he's going to catch it, no problem, and run it back at you. Bench-wise, Herring, Healy, and O'Toole is the front row replacements, with Toole, one of the guys who didn't play in that last game against South Africa, coming into the team with the absence of Furlong. Ian Henderson, likewise, the second row replacement. Peter O'Mahony, a few question marks about his game time being exceptionally limited coming into this one, but he's a veteran, so Andy Farrell likes the experienced guys. He likes those kind of calm heads to come off the bench. He's fiery, but he doesn't get much more experience than Peter O'Mahony, so he comes off the bench. Conor Murray, likewise, experienced cat. Frawley, as I mentioned, is the guy putting the pressure on for the number 10 jersey. And Jamie Osborne, a bit of a utility, sharp guy. Did really well down in South Africa, I thought, under kind of a lot of pressure. But, if he comes on, the All Blacks will have to be mindful of him, because he is proper danger man in the back line. All Black squad, basically injury enforced changes from the team which played against England at the weekend. Mainly Taylor is out with HIA, so Almua comes in a hooker, and Barrett is out with an HIA, so Damian McKenzie gets the start at 10. Both of those guys are good players, but both of those guys can be a little bit erratic. Almua, in particular, the line-out throwing. First half against England was very consistent. Second half was largely disrupted. So that's going to be an area for the All Blacks. They need to be basically good because, it's not exactly a reassuring one knowing that Almua is going to start. But around the park, the dude is a unit, and he looked it against England, which is pleasing. And Damian McKenzie, that clutch conversion last week against England showed that he can be the kind of ice in his veins player to win you a game, but he does run hot and cold. So from an All Blacks point of view, we need him to run hot if we're going to have a chance over in Dublin. Front row, Tamaiti Williams, Almua, as I mentioned, and Lomax, so it's the same props. There's no temptation to bring back De Groot, even though I think he's probably our best scrummaging loose head. Razor said that one is on form. Remember, he missed out last week due to kind of protocol breach, but he's not been able to make his way back into the 23. I thought he might have been a guy to get back in, but Razor said Tamaiti Williams is playing well, so it is a form selection for him. Scotty, Barrett, and Tupavai continue on the second row. Barrett was defensively very busy last week against England, making a heap of tackles. Vai came off pretty early on in the second half with a knock against England, but he's back fit, which is good news. Satiti, Kane, and Savia. It was all about Satiti last week. He was absolutely man of the match for a good reason. If any of you Irish fans haven't been watching the All Blacks like over the Rugby Championship or last week against England, he is the guy to watch. He gets himself into space. He's got a wicked offload. He'll be right up there with the tackle count, putting in some crunching ones. He is only a young man who's very early on in his test career, but he has taken to the game as well as anyone else I think I've ever seen. Genuinely, he has looked quite incredible. So he is definitely one to watch. And I say that in a team which is fielding Ardie Savia, the reigning World Player of the Year. Satiti at the moment is the guy to look out for. Ratima and Dimac, as I mentioned, the 19 combo. We would like to see some speedy ball from Ratima. At times, the English were able to kind of disrupt and slow down the ball for him last week. So he needs quick ball if we're going to get the best out of him. Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane continue on at 12 and 13. I swear Rieko blew at least one kind of men outside him overlap last week, but he still gets a lot more stick than he needs to. But the pressure's going to be on him against Ireland with the kind of ongoing, a few weeks ago headline thing about him and Johnny Sexton at the last World Cup. I feel like that one is, if nothing else, going to sell a few copies of a book, but yeah, pressure will be on Rieko to put in a good performance. And in the back three, Mark Talia, slippery as an eel last week, bagged a couple of tries against England. Caleb Clark, please don't get any penalties for deliberate knock-ons because he's got a little bit of a habit of doing that. And then Will Jordan, absolute fire at fullback. So pretty good looking side. But as I said, a couple of injury-enforced changes and no De Groot. George Bell comes in as our hooker replacement. He is on the low side of the experience scale. Tuangafasi and Tossi. Tossi's a big 140-plus kilo tight head replacement. Did well last week. Came off the bench and made some serious impact. Likewise did Paddy Tuipulotu in the second row. Samapini Finau is another one who's, I don't want to say got pressure on him because we got so many loose forwards injured in terms of like Blackadder and Papali'i and Jacobson and whatnot that he kind of gets this position on the bench by default. But it'd be nice to see him chuck his big body around. Cam Roygaard, certainly a good impact number 9. I think we saw that last week. He's a big physical 9. So if there's any tired legs up against the Irish, he's a man to exploit that. ALB, double yellow card man last week. Hasn't gotten into hot water for that last yellow card that he got for a high shot. And then Stephen Perifeta comes in as our utility replacement to potentially cover 10 and fullback and whatnot. So, yeah, barring a couple of HIAs, the All Black squad is largely pretty stable. Some stats for you. The Irish squad likes the ball. They tend to dominate the possession numbers. It's very rare, at least this year anyway, and in recent years, that Ireland end a game with less than 50% possession. They've averaged 54% this year. There's only 2 games where Ireland have not managed 50% possession in a game, and both of those games are games they lost. It was their game against England in the Six Nations and game 1 down in South Africa. So there seems to be at least from that small sample size, a direct correlation between Ireland having the ball and getting good results. And at home, they even average higher. They're like almost at 60% possession. So Ireland like to get the ball, like to go through those phases, like to grind teams into the dust. It's hard work tackling and tackling and tackling, especially when they've got that quick recycle ball. But they are averaging 1 yellow card a game, which is an area of concern. Like, there are times when the Ireland side has been one with kind of pretty phenomenal discipline, but the yellow cards are one that are a little bit costly recent times, so they'd like to keep 15 guys on the field. And the lineout's largely been pretty solid. It's averaged 88%, which is, very respectable. You'd like to be in the 90s if you can, but high 80s is certainly solid enough. But interestingly, again, the 2 worst lineout performances for Ireland this year are their 2 losses. Like, 85 against England is not terrible, but again, you'd like it to be a bit higher. And then 71% in that game against South Africa where they lost. So there seems to be, again, small sample size, but a connection between Ireland safe with the ball in hand and then safe at line-out time, getting good results. There's also an interesting trend with Ireland that they seem to get better as the halves go on. Like, if you compare the first 20 to the second 20 for points scored and points conceded for Ireland in both the first and second half, the second 20 of each half, they concede fewer and score more points. So Ireland as a side, as the half goes on, they get better. And I think there's a connection with them having so much possession. It is hard for teams to constantly tackle, get up, and tackle, get up, and tackle, and get up. So as the half goes on, the Irish find more space, they have more ball, they score more points, and they concede fewer. So that is certainly going to be one for the All Blacks to watch, especially when you consider the All Blacks are not a great second half team this year. If you look at their points difference this year, first half, the points difference is positive 124 points. The score goes largely in favour of the All Blacks in the first half. Second half, over the course of this year, they're at plus 10. So they've almost conceded just as many points as they've scored in the second half. All Blacks, which is a weird one, because as an All Blacks fan, we've always been a team that beats teams at the death, including Ireland. Grew up watching that kind of stuff, but at the moment, it is not a thing. We are a first half team. Hopefully we can get a good lead and then hold off. Although last week's game against England was a nice shift, because it was a game with the All Blacks, again, like the old All Blacks of old, managed to kind of pull it out of the fire at the death. So they've still got that in the bank, but just trending-wise, it's been the first half where the All Blacks have had more success this year. Now, interestingly also, the All Blacks, kind of with the stereotype, have been scoring a lot more tries from their backs under Razor than their forwards. Like, if you look at most teams, the split between backs and forwards is pretty even, including the Irish. But for the All Blacks, 32 tries from the backs, 14 from the forwards. It is massively lopsided. So yeah, keeping the All Blacks' backs quiet, starving them of possession is a good way to do that. It's a good way to get success against the ABs. Now, discipline is obviously one that comes up for the All Blacks, especially after last week where they conceded so many first half penalties. And it's interesting because when Razor started with the ABs, against England, against Fiji, we were easily keeping the penalty count below 10 a game. But as the Rugby Championship got on, we kind of trickled up. It was closer to 12 penalties conceded a game. It was 11 last week, including 7 in the first half against England. So I feel like if the All Blacks are going to give Ireland a go, keeping the penalty count 10 or below would certainly be a help in that regard. The bookies are saying Ireland are the favourites, so us Kiwis go into this one as underdogs. 5 points, the bookies say. The Rugby Forecast algorithm is a little more conservative, saying Ireland by 1. Now, if you are going to have a flutter on the game, I invite you to check out Rugby Forecast's betting analysis section. You know, when you're playing against the bookies, you are essentially playing against the house, and they stack the cards in their favour. But Rugby Forecast's betting analysis has a look at their pricings and compares it to what the algorithm thinks is the kind of favoured result. And it identifies any area of kind of potential mispricing. So it doesn't tell you like who's going to win. Obviously, that'd be gold. But it tells you where there's potential value in bets. They make it really easy. It's like green, yellow, and red. Like green is potentially value priced, whereas red is like not very well priced kind of thing. So it's a cool service to have a look to see if you can get any kind of whatever advantage you can against the bookies. So I'll put a link down to that in the description as well. If you use the code 2CentsRugby when you sign up, you get 20% off your first 3 months. And they give you the first month free anyway, so it's well worth having a play around with if you are tempted to have a flutter. I've lost money, like against Ireland in particular, the Chicago game. I lost like $50 because I just assumed it was going to be like the old All Black side that always comes back. Like we went down against Ireland, I was like, oh, this is a good chance to put some money on the ABs because they'll be paying a lot more to win. And then they lost. So that's how the rivalry has changed, I guess. It is not at the Aviva. It's a Friday game, which means 6-day turnaround for the ABs. So potentially a few tired legs because they played, on Saturday against the English at Twickenham. But yeah, we'll see how they go. Nick Berry from Australia is the ref. Hopefully he has a good game. It's a morning game for those of us in New Zealand, like 9:10. 8:10 for you guys local in Ireland. So that's a good time for both sets of fans, I think, Saturday morning. Get up and watch some rugby with some breakfast. Should be a good one. You guys let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Do you think Ireland are quite rightly favourites? Their record at home is very good. Like the All Blacks haven't beaten Ireland in Dublin since 2016, which I think was a week or two after that Chicago game. So it's been close to 10 years since we've managed to win there. We've had a couple of losses in the meantime. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts on the game. As I said, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.